We got one. A lifelong Miami Hurricanes fan gets to fulfill his childhood dream. Kenton Dopson III. Welcome to the U.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday. We made it. I'm Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC, and writer for Canes County at Rivals. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. On this loaded episode, a national college football analyst made an interesting assessment on Miami's path to the college football playoff. We're getting closer to the decision date for Javari Flowers, about 2.5 weeks away on that one. Where does Miami stand? But yes, my friends, Miami has a new verbal commit, class of 2027 cornerback, local out of Miami Norland High School. Kenton Dopson III has picked the U. To help break that down, we've got the man, the myth, the legend, our boy Blue, Larry Blustein, with us. Now, Blue, I was very touched by learning more about Kenton Dopson's story. You know, his mother passed away when he was very young, and his mom and dad, both huge Miami fans. His late mother had him in Miami gear right out of the womb, and he chose her birthday, March 13th, to announce his verbal commitment, and he went with the hometown Miami Hurricanes. This is a 6'1", 185-pound corner out of Norland. Now, he's class of 2027, so Miami has to wait the extra year, but I think, Blue, for a player like this, it's going to be worth the wait.
No, it's definitely. Thanks a lot for having us, Alex. Appreciate that as always. Happy Friday to you and your loyal viewers and listeners, and certainly great get. I mean, he reminds me, and I don't take it out of context, fans, but when they got Patrick Peterson, back then, Patrick was a young kid with a lot of promise. A lot of people talked a lot about him. He was a great athlete, a corner. Back in the day, everyone was going, 6'1" corner. Nah, he'll be a safety. But with Kenton, he's a different bird. He's a long kid. He's athletic, great hips, covers extremely well. He's been playing at a high level for a long time, and certainly somebody, like you said, is going to be worth the wait. I mean, he's dominated from the day he started, and he played as a ninth grader on New Orleans team a year ago when they went to state and lost in the state finals to Tampa Berkeley Prep. He's in a great family, like you mentioned. His dad's so supportive, and his dad wanted to have the announcement, and make it a big thing. Usually kids will announce, and that'll be it. They'll just be at friend's house or they'll be at school, but we had it at a local place, that a lot of the supporters usually go to, and had a really good crowd. And I want to thank his dad so much for inviting me, but we had a show last night, so it was tough to make it. But they got a gem, and Miami knows it. I mean, and certainly with a new defensive back coach, somebody's going to be able to, kind of open Kenton's, playbook even more. And, he gets a lot of, work because of the fact that in 7-on-7, he goes against some of the best in the country. Even in practice, when you take a look at some of the players that he's gone against, like Jade Card, who was there and now at FAU. It's a great get for Miami early on. I know people go, oh, well, it's all, it's so far away. It's closer than you think, believe me. Yeah. And he'll be on campus early, a year from January, which will be perfect for him. And smart kid, does it in the classroom, for those of you who need to know too. So, yeah, perfect fit for Miami. As you mentioned, he's been a fan forever, went to quite a few games this past year. We got a chance to see him, with some of the visitors, some of the recruits that came along. And, Miami knows they got a gem here.
So from the class of 2027, let's go to the class of 2025, because there's one more really, really good player who hasn't decided yet, and that's Javari Flowers, cornerback out of Miami Northwestern. And, the reason why his decision is coming down to March 31st is because he was originally a class of 2026 who reclassified. And again, he's going to be making his decision about 2.5 weeks from now, March 31st. And Blue, we've been getting some questions from Locked On Canes listeners about, hey, what's going on with Flowers? It's okay. So Flowers has his whirlwind tour is continuing because he's doing all of his official visits here this month. He had a visit beginning of March to Auburn. Most recently had his visit to Florida, to the Gators. He's got Georgia coming up on March 17th, a Syracuse visit coming up on March 21st, and then Miami gets the last official visit on March 24th. So, for what it's worth, Blue, the recruiting trends out there, most of the publications consider Miami to be, a favorite for Flowers. I'm hoping Miami getting that final official visit is the one that really puts the Hurricanes over the top before his final decision. I mean, are you liking the Miami vibe for Javari Flowers? That's number one. And then number two would be, how can this player impact your football team? Because with Flowers, I'm not only looking at what he can do on defense, I'm looking at what he can do on special teams.
Yeah, well, you're 100% right. I mean, he's not your ordinary dude. I mean, he was up at the Under Armour game as one of the handful of invited juniors, Campbell being the other. And Campbell ended up leading all defenders with 8 tackles in the game. And then Flowers comes up with an interception. You had Naheem Burrows from Jacksonville Bulls. So you had some really good juniors in the game. Jake Krell too, as well. So, I mean, he's another level kid. He's as fast as anybody you're going to put on the football field. He's got instincts. He's played this game for a long, long time. Obviously, he surrounds himself with some really good talent. Northwestern is loaded with guys on both sides of the ball. And you mentioned a key, special teams. And I know that everybody put their eggs in that huge basket that was Chris Johnson. But being fast doesn't always equate with being a great football talent, especially with being a kick returner. You take a look at being a kick returner and you look back at some of the great ones. And, obviously Miami had the greatest here at the University of Miami, and he went on to do it in the NFL. And then obviously Devin Hester was, a Hall of Famer. Well, it takes a knack. And I think that with him coming and already with Malachi Toney, who's another one, this is a guy who can read a wedge as good as anybody and break it outside, you see. And then and I think you make a great point, because where Miami's building extremely well in the defensive secondary, he's going to be a piece of what the future is, with some really good talent coming aboard. So I think for him to add that dimension of being a special teams stud certainly helps. Yeah, he's a must-get, local kid. Family's really, really supportive, and I know that the family would like to see him close by. So good thing, Miami, especially with the addition of a new defensive coach, new coordinator, who everybody is talking so positively about, especially the way he brings his A game to every practice, and he's 100%, in your face to make you a better player. And it's always good to have a coach like that. And I think a lot will be said over the next couple of weeks, because with these kids are all, that are all going to the spring practices. Every day there's new kids out at the practice, new teams out there. And that's what it's all morphed to in the spring. Yeah, it's great for the colleges, but it's almost better for the recruiting, because they could have kids on campus and they could watch the product as it unfolds. And then I think in Miami's case, especially with a new defensive secondary coach and a new coordinator, if you're a defensive player, you're going to see it unfold right before your very eyes, and you're going, oh, wait a minute, I want to be a part of this. These guys are, they're having fun out there, but they're learning.
And by the way, both of Miami's new DB coaches are very popular on the recruiting trail. Like I've noticed that a lot of, when you hear from these, 26 and even 27 defensive backs, a lot of them mention Will Harris. We know how important Will Harris was,
and
for
Terry
Jalen
Jefferson
Waters.
too.
Yeah, and Terry Jefferson and Zach Etheridge as well. I know Etheridge was someone that was mentioned by Kenton Dopson
Right.
as being big in his recruitment. So between
Nice.
Coach Jefferson, Coach Etheridge, Coach Harris,
Yeah.
Miami is cleaning up. Now, when we come back, the Hurricanes have been mentioned among the top 6 for the top wide receiver in the class of 2026. So that's an opportunity for Kevin Beard to get a big one to add to his resume. And I also want to get to with Blue, because Blue is so good with this stuff year after year. Miami's overall talent level, how much have they increased that from 2024 coming into the 2025 football season? We will break it down. We're only getting started, my friends, on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. You want to keep it locked. We're all about the stats because numbers don't lie. And when it comes to the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X, the numbers are on an MVP level, my friends. With the ability to tow up to 8,500 pounds, it can quite literally carry the whole team, plus the gear, wherever you need to go. It's powered by a twin-turbo V6 engine, delivering the strength and performance to handle highways, back roads, and everything in between. And with room for up to 8 people, the Armada Pro 4X is built for big crews, big adventures, and even bigger memories. Whether you're exploring off-road trails or rolling up to the arena, the Armada Pro 4X brings power, versatility, and style wherever you go. Take your adventures to new heights in the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X. Learn more at nissanusa.com. We are also proudly brought to you by FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. I've got my eye on a few underdogs this year, and FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on college hoops action all tournament long with FanDuel. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. For your next listen, make sure you check out Locked On College Basketball. When you're getting those brackets ready, Andy Patton and Isaac Shade, they're going to be your cheat sheet to be fully armed and ready for the tournament. Locked On College Basketball, like this show, is available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. So Larry Blustein, a player that, I'm not saying Miami's going to land him. I hope they do. But Tristan Keys is the top wide receiver in the class of 2026. And I was reading a report that Tom Loy at 24/7 wrote about Keys' recruitment, and he mentions Miami like among the top 6 schools that are very much in the mix. I was actually surprised that Loy didn't mention Ole Miss, which I thought would have been the favorite given he's in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and that's like, for Ole Miss, it's like, how do you let that guy leave the state? But he mentioned Alabama, Auburn, Miami, LSU, Texas A&M, and Tennessee. I have heard a lot of Tennessee buzz, and in talking about Miami, Tristan Keys, he mentioned he's monitoring what Malachi Toney is doing at Miami. That's his dude, seeing that Toney is practicing well. So Blue, I know you don't just scout players in this state. You scout players probably in other countries if there are football prospects out there. Mississippi, of course, very much included in this country. But what can you tell us about Tristan Keys and why he's the top receiver in the class?
Yeah, big time kid, 6'2.5", 6'3", 180, 185. And this is somebody who is a physical guy, who's a track kid as well. I mean, he has an opportunity. I mean, he goes to all 3 levels. He can get, balls short. He goes up for him. He's a fighter. Because of his speed, comes out of the Hattiesburg area where there's a lot of talent, in that area. He's one of those guys. I mean, just makes plays. And the very fact that every SEC school, and you mentioned Tennessee as being probably the leader right now because of Kelsey Pope. Kelsey Pope's a great recruiting coach and, somebody who appeals to a lot of those players. But, I mean, Ole Miss, Ole Miss is in the mix somewhere along the line.
Yeah,
They may be a little bit quiet in the mix, but when you have A&M and Arkansas and Alabama, that's pretty decent company. The SEC is always a area. If you go in and get a kid out of the SEC area, you've done your due diligence. Yeah, like you mentioned, let's see if, Kevin Beard's got to be in on this thing like a spy, and sell him on the point that, we've got, Luke Nickel coming up when, by the time you get here, and Luke's going to be really special, and he knows some really good receivers, and we've got a great offensive line, and we've got tremendous, offensive people coming in, running backs, and we have, as you mentioned, Malachi Toney, and we have, outstanding players that are already on the roster that have an opportunity to make him even better with tight ends, like 2 or 3 tight ends right now, obviously, that can make the offense better. But I like him. He's a gamer. He's a guy that, like I said, he'll go up for balls. He's not afraid to mix it up, and he's got the size to do it. So and plays at a high level. He's played against some of the tops, at all the camps, and has always come out a winner. So his twitch is great, and I'm not one of those guys that like to use the twitch, but he does have that. If you're going to add that in as an Affleck thing. He'd be great. Miami needs to land big time players like that to get to the next level. It's, always good to have, a bunch of kids, but, you look at the Ohio States and the Georgias and those teams that are in the mix all the time, and they have an abundance of that talent. So if they lose a quality 4 or 5 type of star defensive end or a linebacker, they have another one waiting to, and that's where Miami's trying to build to.
Yeah, no doubt. And I guess Keys, I saw him at a Miami practice. I think it was the first practice of spring. He must have enjoyed what he saw. He mentioned seeing what Malachi Toney was doing in practice. That's a good sign. And so, Blue, I enjoyed the first week of spring practices. The second week is coming up starting this Tuesday. I always lean on you with this because you've watched so many Miami teams over the years, obviously so many college teams around the country, and in high school teams, about the talent. How do you feel about Miami's overall talent level in 2025? Do you feel that from top to bottom, does Mario Cristobal have a better, deeper overall roster this year than he did last year?
Yeah. Well, I talked and I think you and I have gone through this building process kind of together, analyzing it throughout the years. And I remember 3 years ago when we sat there and watched the offensive line get pushed back into the running backs, repeatedly. And now that's arguably the probably the deepest and the most impactful place on the offense is the offensive line, and it shows you what can happen. So you add the pieces behind that fortress, and that's the big thing. Obviously quarterback wise, we know they're pretty well set as far as talent is concerned with Beck this year, and Luke Nickel obviously, and Judd Anderson, and whoever else comes in. Running game, took a blow. I mean, you lose a guy like Martinez who came into his own in the middle of the season and never stopped getting better and better and better. But you also have somebody like a Lyle who was on the back burner, and you have, guys that have some talent, incoming kids as well. Receivers, you take a big blow. You take losses at almost every, from the slot all the way to the X and the Z. And so it's going to, you have the talent, but they're going to have to step up and come in and play. Obviously, defensively is where you're going to see. I know everyone's going, well, geez, it couldn't get any worse. But let me tell you, but secondary wise, look who they brought in. They brought Brantley in, they brought Poised in. They've got a lot of talent. Brown has asserted himself. They got a load of talent up front. We're seeing
Lucas they brought in
back in, yeah. Blunt starting to show. I think the key up front is a key Messidor. I definitely do, because experience-wise, leadership-wise, he's like the old guy in the room, where the guy, the younger guys, they have so much young talent on that defensive line, especially at the ends. Linebackers, it's not a concern, but it's a question.
Mm-hmm.
We know that Aguirre is as good as any when he's healthy. Had a tough time staying healthy. Wesley kind of took maybe a step back. He's got to take that step up and then some. Then guys like Pruitt and Bryant and some of the newcomers coming in at the linebacker position are going to have to step up. I mean, because that is a position right now out of all three of the secondary, middle, or in up front, that's a position of concern for depth as well. So potentially their roster, obviously from experience standpoint and from talent, is as good as you're going to get. And I think that, new kicker, obviously everyone, no, you lost one of the best kickers of all time.
Yeah.
Most accurate.
Well, and on that note, how do you feel about Abram Murray, who's going to be he's
stud,
one of the better ones in high school.
No doubt. But you got to get it done where, where Borregales did. He came in there and he acted like it was just, Chaminade again. He came in and treated college just like it was high school. So, there's a lot of guys who are going to make that transition, and some are going to make it, seamlessly. Some are going to have some problems, but that's not just here; that's everywhere. Miami's got and I think the schedule plays in their favor, except towards the end when they go on the road against some pretty good guys. I think by then they'll have a lot of this stuff ironed out, where a lot of these question marks will be answered. So I'm looking for a great season. To give you a number, we'll wait until late, middle August for that. But I still think Miami's got that opportunity here during the spring. If you're going to go to the spring game, you should, because I think that they're not going to hide anything. There's nothing to hide. Everybody's going to try to do their best, especially the scrimmages. So I'm optimistic about this, and I think a lot of these young guys are seeing it for the future. That's why you're getting a Dobson. That's why you're getting some of these big-time kids who've, made their commitments over the last couple of weeks and the last months. And, listen, these kids talk. Elijah Lofton's going to tell his boys out west, hey, listen, this is a place to be, just like Brevin Jordan did with him, and said, hey, listen, this is an opportunity for you to go, to the East where a lot of people don't know about you and make a huge statement. And I think that Brevin Jordan, if taken off the leash this year, Elijah Lofton taken off the leash this year, will be one of the most productive college football players in America. He's got everything that you're asking. He can run the ball. We saw that. He can catch the ball. He's going to be mismatched and, going out on passes. In short yardage plays, they're going to put him in at a running back position. He throws 75 yards in the air. It could go wildcat. So, this is a guy that, could be one of those. I thought last year he would have more of a role, but, obviously they had, other phases of the game. But Miami's got some talent, and now they've got coaches, that, and I know that's been a concern, can these coaches coach these players up? This is going to be the ultimate test this year, with new coordinator on defense, with a couple new, as you mentioned, new defensive secondary coaches, and a coordinator who I think has an opportunity to be special in this program.
Well, coming up next, a national college football analyst gave his assessment on Miami's path to the college football playoff. I want Larry Blustein's reaction. You guys want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new Locked On Canes. My friends, we're not done with Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, spending all in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on things like food delivery. Now I budget smarter and I save more. And instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. By the way, folks, hit that subscribe button on YouTube if you haven't already. We're closing in on 20,000 YouTube subscribers, which will be a big milestone for us. We're getting close to it. So if you watch our episodes frequently, keep in mind that subscribe button is free. So smash it today. We have our good friend Larry Blustein with us. So Blue, I was reading something that J.D. Piquel wrote. He's a national On3 sports analyst, but he wrote this specifically about Miami and Miami's path to the college football playoff. He said, if Miami's defense can be 20 to 30% better than it was last year, and the offense only 10 to 15% worse than last year, he says there's a college football playoff path for Miami. Does that math check out, Blue, where it'd be like, okay, obviously having the number one offense 2 years in a row would be difficult, but if there's only a little bit of drop off there and like a 20 to 30% pickup on the defense, could Miami be a playoff team by that math?
Yeah, especially on the offensive side where there's a lot of pieces to replace. I mean, a lot of valuable and key pieces, albeit there's some really good talent that are going to be coming in and plugging in. But there's a lot of that. And I could understand where he's coming from, but there's a lot of questions. Defensively, like I said, there's not a lot, just to get a little bit better. I think they're going to be a lot better. So that question will be answered. Offensively, still, let's face it. I mean, there's a lot of key. You look at productivity last year from the Restrepos all the way down to, like I mentioned, what your running back did and a quarterback who, come on.
But let me take it here with the quarterback this year, because something about Carson Beck. Now, I'm not going to ask you about his current relationship status. I'm getting tired of this TMZ gossip after 24 hours of it. All that I care about with Carson Beck is football. That's what I'm focused on. How does he fit with Shannon Dawson's offense? And do you think he's going to have enough? Because, Miami lost, their top four receivers from last year, but a guy like JoJo Trader, I'm watching doing big things in practice. I have high hope for CJ Daniels, Elijah Lofton, and Miami might add more in the portal as well.
Yeah, well, I'm not questioning that. I'm just saying here's at least in Cam Ward, you got to see a full month and a half of him during the spring. Yeah. You're not getting the chance to see any of Carson Beck, and he's not building those relationships. If you remember back when Cam got here, his main thing is that he had arguments all the time with Restrepo and he did this and that. He's not having the opportunity to do that right now because he's not on the field and he's not doing, he's watching and he could say things, but there's no way unless you're actually, running the ship that you're going to have an opportunity to really be, nobody's going to respect you like you're a leader because you're not doing anything. I mean, right now, it's Emory Williams, it's Judd Anderson, it's Luke Nickel. They're getting the reps, they're getting all the reps, and they're getting the shine. So that bothered me a little bit. I know it might not bother a lot of people. Oh, well, he's good. He'll pick up right where he left off. Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is fine if he was with Georgia because he knew everybody. He doesn't know these guys. He has no relationship with all these players, especially newcomers. So that's the thing that bothers me from that standpoint because I think in relationships, especially when you're on the field, knowing, I know it sounds cliche-ish, but when they go, we're going to war with our brothers. Well, if you've been there a while, they are your brothers. See, that's the one thing I know that a lot of fans just kind of want to skip over. But the very fact that, it's a wait and see type of thing. How is he going to be with these guys? How is he going to be if things go south? Because remember, all these guys are new. You're going to have, running back wise, you're going to have some really, I think Pringle will maybe get a little bit of a, look like Lyle did last year, but Lyle's got to be the dude. He's got to be the home run hitter. He's that home run hitter. He's going to have to break off those 60, 70-yard runs. He's going to have to, he's going to have to be that marquee back. Fletcher's great. but Fletcher's not breaking one off 60 yards. He's just not. He's going to be that, tackle to tackle guy who, can create havoc. They've got some runners that can run the ball. From an offensive line standpoint, that's your pillar. That's your pillar of light to say, okay, well, I understand what you're saying, but when he comes under center, he's going to have a fortress. He's got a center who's played 100 games. You got marquee kids all the way around you. Kids like Bell who are really stepping up their game. Even though a lot of people kind of criticized him a lot last year. Oh, he's too big. Let me tell you something. Their offensive line, and I watched it, they have an opportunity when staying healthy to be the best in the ACC, no doubt. Because they come back intact and they're very talented and they've worked hard, and you're going to get a chance to see guys like Ryan Rodriguez and people like that you haven't seen in more important roles. So that's not my problem. My problem is being acclimated with everybody else on the offensive side. I mean, he doesn't have that. That's the one thing. As great as Cam Ward was, he had his issues at the beginning with a lot of the receivers. They weren't on the same page. And I mean, it was brought out, and, that they had their little battles, and Cristobal had his little arguments with them, and, and things turned out fine. It was the most productive offense maybe in the history of Miami, but there's a lot of that bridge to climb before that happens. And, during the season, especially starting off with Notre Dame, who's going to, I mean, they're not going to be Notre Dame last year, but they're not going to be that much worse. Believe me.
No, they're not. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're going to, Al Golden leaving, I think, kind of hurts them in the fact that their scheme defensively was really, really good. And so we'll see, but to answer your question, I think that, Miami's got an opportunity to be really, really good, but a lot of things have to fall in place. I feel a lot more confident about what's going to happen on the defensive side of the ball, because you get a lot of those young pieces back from last year. Bain, who could be the ultimate stud. I talked about Akeem Messidor, who I think is going to be, lights out, because of the fact that he's been there, done that. Blunt has shown, hey, listen, he's a young kid, but he's going to, make some inroads. And Wesley Bissaint's got to step up. He's been in this program, 4 years now. So he's got to be the guy, to step up. And then secondary wise, they're bringing in a lot of talent. Plus they're adding some young kids. So I'm really optimistic. I just want to see what this, the next couple of weeks when they return back from spring break is going to be in spring. I'm going to get out there a couple of times. I want to get out there for a scrimmage. I'm going to watch how some of these defensive backs are playing. And I think that you're going to be quite surprised how talented and how athletic they are. And, a lot more than they have been, in this regime, or perhaps maybe back in the last decade. I don't think Miami's had a secondary potentially as athletic and as talented as they have now.
Well, I love the insight as always, and I say it. Larry Blustein has the most informative radio show in the country. You back on Monday this coming week, Blue, or Thursday again on QAM?
We'll be on Tuesday next week. Tuesday. I mean, we're dancing around the Panthers and the Heat, as you know, and I thank you so much for filling in for us last week, because it really is. We have an opportunity to have a lot of really good talent, whether it be coaching talent. We're going to have Mario Cristobal be on probably. We'll get him right after the spring ends, because then he can give us a good synopsis of what's going on. And then he could talk about more of the recruits that came in early and how they did during spring. And there's quite a few of them. But we have players every week. We have coaches every week. I like the show. It's really informative. And last night we kind of turned to wrestling a little bit, and did a pretty good job. And speaking about wrestling, potential Miami target Ryan Moret from Southridge, Miami, won the state title. I know his dad and everybody are happy that he may come back next year. I don't see it. He's cutting now from 290 to get down to 287. But God bless him if he does, because that's a lot of cutting. And if you've seen Ryan's not fat. Ryan's he's pretty lean. So wherever it's going to come from, God bless the kid. He's a great kid. I think if he comes to Miami, and I know a lot of fans were texting me the other day when Ty Wise's son committed to Clemson, and they were all upset. And but I told them all along, it's really tough. When you have 70 colleges offering you in their elite schools, and you're going every week someplace else. You know what? The legacy is nice. And Ty, listen, if Ty Wise, that he was secretly pushing really hard that Miami would be the guy, but the team. But you know what? As a parent, and and you're going to find out as your son gets older, you want what's best for him, but at the same time, he's got to make the decision, and that's what happened. So, to all the people who were lashing out at me, not in anger, but just, hey, you know what?
Right.
That's a tough loss. And it was, because he's a generational type of kid. But Miami's going to, let's say they get a Ryan Moret, and then they start working more on a lot of the kids. Like you said, here they already, struck gold in Dobson, because I don't think anybody in your listeners understand that he's a dude. I mean, he's if he stays healthy and he progresses, he's a first round NFL pick down the line. So he's that big. He's he's aggressive. He's fast. And he's smart.
Oh, all the love to Larry Blustein. Make sure you follow this man on X at Prep Red Zone FL. Does a fantastic job. Blue, thank you so much for joining us. We'll talk to you again soon.
Anytime, Alex. Look forward to seeing you out there.
I love it. We'll talk to everyone. We'll probably do a Saturday episode. I just want people to know, for a few days next week, I will be on a vacation with my family, which means you can expect 5 or 6 verbal commitments, because that's usually what happens when Donno's out of pocket, is when all this. So that's good news. We'll probably have some good recruiting news next week. I'm going to do an episode tomorrow. I'll be on a cruise ship for a few days after that. So we'll talk to you tomorrow, and then a few days off right here on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.